Well, welcome. Welcome to this PowerPoint where we're going to provide you with guidance in the use of the CRI. And our focus is on having a purpose guide your assessment. And for our purpose, we want a comprehensive assessment. We want to tap into strengths, weaknesses, possible contributions to those strengths or weaknesses. But before we do that, probably a brief history will be helpful. The CRI is the result of a study that was published in the Reading Teacher where we looked at higher level thinking in the informal reading inventories. So I want us to see here, what we did is we identified two types of questions and labeled them as text-based. So we said if it's a literal, such as the text says, Mary, a character in the story, is in 4th grade. The literal question, what grade was Mary in? That's obviously, but watch, low-level inference. For instance, the text says, Mr. Wilson's car would not start. Mr. Wilson was late for work. And look at the question. Why was Mr. Wilson late for work? Well, the only thing that's missing here is the actual word. So you have shortened sentence and you make an inference, but it's so low, we categorized those together and called them text. Then we move to high-level inference here. Notice this. The text describes two characters and several circumstances in their lives. So an inference question that required higher level reading skills, why do you think that the two characters in the story became friends? Now, do you see what you have to do? You have to go in and make inferences about ranges of information in the story that you've connected. That's a standalone category, higher level inference. This also a standalone, critical response questions, such as the story describes characteristics of two young children on a field trip. And here would be a critical response item. If you were a teacher, which of the two children would you rather have in your class? All right. So you have to really make comprehensive judgments about both before you can understand. Now let's look at what we found, right? Here, this is the literal, straight literal. We found 66% of the questions were literal. Now remember low-level inference, 25%. So when you combine these two and you look at text-based, 91% of the questions were text-based. We had 8% inference, 8% of inference and 0.8. So higher level, 8.8. So as a result of that study, we were asked to create an inventory assessing higher level thinking. What did we use? A type of NAEP we used to guide us, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Keep in mind, 33% of NAEP questions are text-based. However, 67% are higher level. Now, NAEP continues to be used across the country. It's national. And folks, if your students are going to be taking the NAEP, they better be prepared to deal with higher level thinking. That may be significantly different from state demands. But let's look at the CRI. We have 40% text-based. We're not quite as high as NAEP, and we have 60% that are higher level. So you see, the ultimate purpose here, critical reading that's a response to text that's thoughtful and reflective. So how are you going to go about administering and evaluating so that you could have a comprehensive evaluation? You're going to use interviews. First, there will be a parent interview, and this is strongly recommended if you're going to be doing comprehensive. You need to find clues about the student's history. A teacher interview. This is so crucial because you want some indication of the teacher's orientation to reading. And finally, the child interview. You need that because you are going to want that as a tool to have positive rapport. If you're a reading specialist, this student is probably not going to be very familiar with you. So you want to create good rapport as soon as you can. The interviews. If you have a parent interview and you're the specialist, always bring the parent to school. But if you're a graduate student with the assignment, there's nothing wrong with calling the student's parent at home. Teacher interview. If you're a specialist, when you're doing that, have professional standards and have a meeting with the classroom teacher. If you're doing this as an assignment and you're using a child in your own class, then you're going to have to fill out the teacher interview. If it's a colleague, you could do it by phone or during your break. Then, of course, the student interview and the age of the student determines which one you do. But develop that rapport. All right, so we're going to start with, after the interviews, we move to the word list. Folks, the manual has pounded it in. This is not real reading. Why do we give it? Because through the word list, you identify the beginning level, the beginning grade level for the passages that you should use. The flash, that's going to give you some indication of sight vocabulary, and the untimed indication of word analysis. Keeping in mind that the highest grade level at which the child receives 100% on the flash becomes your starting point. So how do you do the word list? You have 2 3x5 cards, and you place them so that the word is hidden. Then, using the lower card, you slide that card down to expose the word, and you show for the silent count of 101 down. So slide down 101, cover. Down 101, cover. All right, so that's how you do the flash. If the child responds in a correct way, what you do is you move down to the next word. You only use the untimed when the student made a mistake on the flash. And folks, any questions at all, please view the video that's in the Help category on the CRI homepage. What's the connection between the word list and the passages? Key here is you begin the oral passage at the highest level at which the child earned a score of 100% on the flash. What about oral reading? Folks, record. In fact, you should record the entire assessment. Now, as the child is doing the oral reading task, you have in front of you the examiner form, and you use your miscue analysis markings to go through and code each of the miscues made. When you are finished with the task and the testing, Now you're ready to evaluate, and you're going to consider each of the following based on: did this maintain meaning? Did it violate meaning? If it maintained, you're going to put a plus in the column, in the row right in front of where that miscue happened. If it violated, you put a 0. So oral reading. After that passage, the child is guided to retell rather. After the retelling, the child's asked the questions. Again, 3 types: text-based, higher inference, and critical response questions. What will the recording look like? When I'm finished, notice we put the time here, and here we have a substitution, here we have a self-correction. All right, so they are recorded verbatim, and here we have an omission. All right, so we had the coding. We do that as we assess. When we're finished, we will have several significant scores. First, the RAI, Reading Accuracy Index. When this is calculated, all errors or miscues are thrown into the formula. However, for an MMI, meaning maintenance index, only the scores that violated meaning are counted in the calculations. So, how does that happen? Remember we looked at this? Right at the bottom of this, you see this? You record how many pluses, how many zeros, how many self-corrections, and how many non-words. And once you input that into the ASII, you will be given the RAI and the MMI, automatically calculated. Important to consider RAI and MMI, but folks, the key here is comprehension. Why? I'm not going to be happy if I have a 99% MMI and a 50% comprehension. I have assigned that fluency is a strength, but my goal is comprehension. So we're going to also note the type of questions which the student tended to have strength, and also those where there were some weaknesses. So we would do that by scoring. So let's go through here. You record and then make a critique. You see, here we have it. We score each of them, and you want to make some observations so that you can have a picture that's pretty comprehensive. Then you're ready to move to the silent reading passage. Always move to silent after oral. You're going to repeat the steps, except there will be no reading task, no oral reading task. Instead, the child reads silently, asked to retell, then the questions. Again, record everything. Even record the time period while the silent reading is being done. That will enable you to check the time. Now, decision time comes in. Where do you go after you finish that first grade level? You started at the level at which the students had the highest score of 100 on the flash. You finished the oral and the silent. Now, if the student did not reach independent level, go back to an easier grade level, the earlier grade level. If the student didn't frustrate, go ahead and move on to the next level. Now here we're going to talk a little common sense. If you're testing a 7th grader And the highest score for 100 rather that the student had was at third grade. And you go and you test the third grade. There's no need to go down to second and first if the student frustrated. So you use some common sense in terms of saying, all right, I'm probably not going to be able to get all 3 levels. So keep in mind there is a not established category for the levels. So don't push a child to the point that you've embarrassed him or that you will get nothing because the child has nothing to give you. All right? So, if you decide to move on, you go to the next grade level, oral first, then silent. And you do this at each level until you know you have a frustration, and then you stop. Something important here to remember. When you are in that classroom as a teacher, your goal is to be sure that the materials you give that child to use are independent when you're trying to get things even stronger, or instructional. You intentionally avoid frustration. Why? It's not going to be successful. And your goal is to teach so that the student can learn. So a rule of thumb, avoid using materials that will frustrate the student. But folks, when you are in that assessment role, when you have the task of finding all levels, you have to put your doctor hat on. Why? Because you have to frustrate them. You know how the doctor pushes on that arm and tries to find out where the pain is? That's what you're going to be doing. You need to be sure that off goes the teacher hat and on goes the doctor hat. Why? Your goal is assessment. Watch what we did with this student to be sure our teacher hat was off and our diagnostician or doctor hat was on. So here we have it. I'll just get this up just one little bit more. Right? Here, can you see this? I think I need to get it down. Sorry. There we go. Here we had a 4th grade child. The 4th grade child was strong with isolated words at the 2nd and 3rd. Here, okay. Here, solid. So, contextual reading as evidenced in MMI was strong through 5th grade. This student's a 4th grader, so that's a good sign. We like that. We know we had an independent level. Wow, look at this. The instructional level is pretty high. In fact, look at the 6th grade level. And here you have oral comprehension was 55, silent comprehension at 6th was 65. So we have signs that the strength here at the 4th and the 5th grade might be wise to start pulling in and stretching him with extensive guided instruction. But what did we have to do? We had to get on that diagnostician's hat. And here we have our frustration level at the 7th grade. All right. Doesn't it feel exciting reaching for those stars and able to go ahead and test students to have a comprehensive assessment in which you are able to study strengths, weaknesses, and be able to understand some of the possible reasons for these strengths and weaknesses, and establish reading levels. For now, we're saying goodbye, but we sure hope to see you very soon.